Material for the brain. Conversations for thinking bodies. Hello and welcome to the 16th episode of Material for the Brain podcast. My guest for today's episode is Yuval Ayalon, a performing artist, handbalancer, acrobat, and a gymnast. Yuval is a lifelong physical practitioner, a man who dedicates his life to the never-ending journey of refining his skills and knowledge of his craft. He came into my attention through a common friend who made a connection between us. I hosted him at my apartment in Vienna while he was teaching one of his incredible handstand seminars. I had a real pleasure to meet such a dedicated person that through hard work has managed to achieve such incredible depth of his art, and alongside with his skills and expertise, remained very humble, accessible, and a kind person. I invited him to the podcast to explore together how physically demanding careers can affect the sense of identity, how fatherhood and the relation to children shapes us, what is the connection between external practices and internal processes, and much more. It was such a pleasure to talk to him, and I hope you will find this conversation enriching. Hello, Yuval. Welcome to my podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Very good, Matan.
First, thank you for taking the time and joining my show. I'm very excited for the conversation that we are about to have. And I wanted to start just by asking, how are you? What are you doing nowadays? How are you dealing with this new lifestyle that we are all going through?
Yeah, I'm dealing with it. I'm not. The main change as far as my daily life is that I'm not traveling to work. So I shifted my work online mostly, which it's something that I had a little doubt in the beginning, but I grew to enjoy it in some respect. I'm still waiting for the borders to open and to go back to my regular schedule. But other than that, on a personal level, as far as my practice, nothing changed. I have the time that my daughters are in school is the time that I practice and do my thing. So in that way, it didn't really affect this period. Did not affect my daily schedule and my ability to continue to explore my practice. And my daughters, luckily since September, my girls were able to go to school. So it wasn't as intense as the first period of the confinement last year.
I don't remember, but are you living in the city or are you in the countryside?
We live 20 kilometers from Paris in kind of a countryside. So it's more of a village setting near Paris.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And also, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you experience, but for me, this lack of ability to travel also, yeah, it gives a little bit more relaxed time with the family. Are you also enjoying that, or is it really something you miss a lot?
I mean, I like you said, it's both. I miss traveling because also a lot of it is my social time. That's the time where I really go and communicate with friends and people around the world. But it did give us a lot of time with the family, which is both positive and also challenging at the same time. As my daughters were also the activities that they had their schedule was also hurt quite badly from the situation. So they are also Zooming. They're doing their practice through Zoom in many cases.
Oh, sounds like a challenge. But yeah, how do you how was for you the transition online? Because I remember that when I met you for the first time and you came to Vienna, we were at my living room and and of course, I did one handstand, and you were spotting me.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
remember
yeah.
how what kind of detailed information you gave me, and I'm wondering, like, how do you manage to maintain this
Yeah,
quality through the Zoom? It's not easy, no?
yeah. So I mean, specifically with what I teach, it's a very static position. So I was surprised the level of feedback that I can give by just by seeing the people in front of me. I can tell them what angle I want to see, and as far as the ability to communicate, almost it's not hurt. It doesn't hurt at all. The only thing that lacks is my ability to spot people. But even then, when I go to a workshop and I have 20 people, most people do not get the hands-on spotting. It's still a lot of it is visual, and a lot of it is looking at me spotting other people or cueing other people. So in that respect, when I have a group of 6 people and I'm able to give them feedback while they're still getting real-time feedback, which is very effective.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's also in your realm. I think, I mean, because there is a lot of like transmission of information. I think that maybe the drawback of the Zoom platform is not that big on the experience, but like when I think about the dance context that I was active before the whole situation, it's really like you strip out the experience and then you're left just with the information, and it's very, very difficult to.
So like I often get a question, can we have, instead of joining, can we have the recording of the class? And I said no, because the heart of the class is receiving the real-time feedback on what they're doing. So it's not a class. I don't teach really. I do give a lot of theory, but it's very practical, and it has to happen while they're doing the drills that we're going over. So the main thing I try to do in online classes as well as the workshop is not so much to teach the material, is to teach how to practice the material later on. And by understanding how to do the movements or the positions that we are trying to learn. So so I still find it to be effective. Everybody takes something else out of it, and it's really about not understanding the theory of the skill or of the movement in the head, but in the body. And then being able to feel these cues while doing it later on the hands.
Yeah, it's I think most of us, after a year into this new life, we've figured out the technical aspect. But I'm a little bit concerned that we are just accepting that like that we can just accepting all the things that we lost on the way, which is kind of inevitable because that's the reality now. But for me, it's like I find there is like.
Look, I'm still optimistic. I'm ready for it to go back to normal, and I believe it's going to go back to normal. But what we learned with online is going to stay with us, and I think I'm going to continue to use it in some way. So today, even before the corona, I was already doing online coaching. I was supporting Handstand practitioners with their practice, mostly critiquing the videos that they sent me. But and now I'm shifting more towards, instead of giving them a video critique and sitting for 40 minutes and writing a critique, I'd rather do a live session, which I find to be very effective.
Yeah, it's also a little bit more personal than all this.
It's more personal. It's almost the same.
Yeah.
But and it really depends on what you're teaching and your art form and handstand, which is part of the acrobatic world or gymnastics, is very internal. It's you, what you do with your body without relation to anything, to anyone. Okay, so it's a little different than art forms, which there's communication, physical communication between two people or more. So yeah, I think every person adapts differently, and then sees what they can give through this medium.
Yeah, totally. Hey, Yuval, I want to ask you a little bit of a little bit of background, if you can share with me, although I know a little bit the story, but also with our audience that are listening to the podcast, like kind of the trajectory of how did you start your story with being a gymnast and later into the performance world and finishing where you are, if you can take us shortly through that period.
Yeah, so I'll try to not to go too much in detail, but give you the big stations, the big of my life. Basically, three big careers. So I started really early on when I grew up in Israel, and when I was about 8 years old, I found gymnastics, and in the beginning I started doing tennis and gymnastics at the same time, and very fast I realized that gymnastics was more of my calling, and really fell in love with the sport itself, and it became very fast a big part of my identity as a young boy, and later on adolescent, and as an adult. And I really remember as a kid the thought going through my mind, like I couldn't imagine people not having what I was doing, because this was very, it was so strong of part of my identity. So and that, I carried that almost throughout my entire career as a gymnast, as a competitive gymnast. And I for many years I competed for Israel, as well as during my army service. I was what they called Sportai Mitztayen, or the special program for athletes in the army. So I was able to continue to practice throughout my service, and then my and then I received a scholarship in the U.S. and I was a collegiate athlete in the U.S. For 4 years, between 94 and 98, where I went to school, got my BA in communications, and then and competed for the university. Then towards the end of my school time, it was 98. I still had the dream of the Olympics in the back of my mind, but I finished my collegiate career with a back injury, and managed to finish my last competitions somehow, but I realized that my body will not be able to take few more years of the sport, and I remember the last landing in the parallel bars in the competition in the national championships in the US, and the moment I landed, I realized that it was over. So I'm 24 years old, 25 years old, and at the very moment I realized, okay, now my life starts again. What do I do? And then it took a few years to start, finding a new direction, or restarting my new career. But a very confusing time, as I described before. Like the identity was first a gymnast. That was who I was for many years, and so I tried to work in the office for a few years. I was stubborn, but after a few failures, I realized eventually that it was not for me. It was not where I was at home or was good at.
What did you do in the office?
I worked in some, high-tech companies, internet companies during the bubble time in 2000s as a marketing personnel.
Okay.
So which in retrospect was ridiculous because it's not something that I'm good at or have something to give. But still, I was like, okay, I'm done with my career. I need to find a new path, and I tried, and it didn't work out. And at some point, I went to when I was 30, I took a year off. I went to travel a little bit. I was in India, and I went to kind of find what I want to do afterwards. I returned. I still had no idea, but what it did do is that I didn't go back into this pattern of trying to find an office job, and then I started. I met someone in Israel that did circus, and I started exploring different things in the circus world, some street performance. And starting to do a little bit light gymnastics. And I started teaching again gymnastics to people who are not athletes. So circus artists, dancers. I started a little group in Tel Aviv, which also sparked my interest in handstand because it was something that I found myself teaching all the time. And I started exploring the handstand from the acrobatic world, which is different from gymnastics. More circus handstand as opposed to competitive gymnastics handstand. And this two world that I started flirting with, the performance world and the handstand world, were kind of, and things started to happen to take their own path as I discovered some new options. Still, at this point, there was no guarantee that I will be able to find a career in this. I'm already, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm 32 at that point. And, I saw some videos of Cirque du Soleil, and suddenly it sparked my, okay, I'm a gymnast. There are some people who are generalists there, and maybe they could, and I started preparing for auditions for Cirque du Soleil, which also led me to explore a little bit of movement and dance and theater, because they require the artist. It's not only to be good acrobats, but being able to be on stage. So I started exploring that to some extent, and it was still very kind of like a there wasn't a great chance that I would get it. So it was a gamble in that sense. And going back as a kid, although I competed and I was on stage to some extent, I was never a performer, a natural performer. My only performance, I think, was my bar mitzvah. The only time I stood in front of other people and did something other than wearing tights and doing flips. That and the world of a gymnast, of a competitive gymnast, is very very internal. There's no projection of emotions at all to the audience, to the people who are looking. It's like you enter this bubble and try to execute a routine that you prepared for through hundreds of hours of practice, and trying to control your emotions, control your fear, control try to do the best possible execution of what you prepare to do in practice. So from there to suddenly getting into a character and projecting something else, an emotion, was a very interesting transition that I went. I still fell back into my acrobatic because that was my strength. That what allowed me to feel comfortable on stage. But it was definitely something that I had a lot to learn, and a lot of it I eventually learned when I was at the show, actually. So fast forward, then I went through some audition process. I auditioned for Cirque du Soleil, and did not make it. And the year later, I had another audition for a company called Dragon, which had a new show in Vegas called Le Rêve. It was created in Europe and then moved to Las Vegas. And the audition went really well. And 2 weeks later, I found myself in Vegas. It was a super fast, transition from living in Tel Aviv in Florentine. Suddenly, I'm in Las Vegas, starting a new career in a big show. So this was, a big transition, and basically, in looking back, that's starting a new chapter in my life, my second career. So I did, gymnastics for 15 years, from the age of 8 to 25, and then it started another career. 8 years. I spent 8 years in Vegas, performing in the same show as an acrobat, as a performer, a general acrobat. And all that happened along with another transition I did, was discovering handstand, which became my craft, my discipline, my circus discipline that I chose and chose to do, and maybe in a way continue, because it's connected to my previous career as a gymnast. So during my 8 years in Las Vegas, I was still daily doing my, I usually went to a room in backstage, and I did my practice between shows and before the show. That was the time that I was continue to explore my handstand practice. So so then I'm in Vegas. That was the big transition. Yeah.
And
any questions about this?
I have a lot of questions.
Back and forth.
I have a lot of questions. First, one thing, it's interesting because I also started with sport, and then I ended up in the performing art realm through the dance career. But I was playing basketball, which is a team sport, and you were a gymnast. But being on stage is a team sport in a way. So first, was it something that was challenging for you to suddenly, from being self-reliant, because I can imagine that being a gymnast, you have to be to some extent a very perfectionist character, because you have to perfect something to really the highest level possible. And being on stage, you're really dependent on a lot of things like transitions. It's not really possible to do the same. So I'm curious, did you face some challenge with this, with adapting into being a team player?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much the team player. I had my biggest challenges were, as even with the little experience I have had with dance, I always had a hard time learning new movements. I did all my, and that's not all gymnasts are like this. This was something that I knew was challenging for me personally and specifically. In the show, I had I need to spend more time to learn each choreography than other people. But once I learned it, I was okay. And of course, some of the numbers were more me running around stage doing my thing. Some of the numbers were actually partnering, dancing with other people. The interesting thing about the show that I did, it was very there was every act was completely different, and then you got into a different character completely. Some of the acts were very fast, aggressive, projecting certain emotion, and other one would be a very slow movement on stage with with the partner. So it was continuously, especially in the first 2 years when I was learning all my roles in the show. It was a new environment for me, which was very interesting for me to explore. And in a way, I learned most of what I know as far as a performer in that show, which is still limited to what I did in the show. So even today, when I have 8 years of experience and 3,000 shows and all that stuff, I'm still, like when I work with dancers, or I worked with Tom a little bit, and the same issue I had with, it's still difficult for me to make that to be able to translate what I see as in movement, dynamic movement, into my own body. It's which I enjoy movement, but this part is very difficult for me. It makes it very heavy.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Also, I guess like something that I always remind myself when I'm teaching is that some people are very good with the eyes, some people are very good with the ears, and some people need the skin. And that's and I think like I was relatively, within my dance education, I was relatively okay with the eyes, but I think it's really like something that is not universal. It's not like that everybody can.
Yeah, for sure. And I always felt, there were like 90 people in the show, and a lot of them were like, they were stage people, dancers and actors and clowns, and even some of the gymnasts were circus artists that they already had that was their natural environment. And for me, it was not a natural environment, which was interesting also to see how I learn and eventually what I do on stage. So it was extremely challenging in that respect, but I learned to also enjoy it a lot. A lot of dancers or people in this world are able to, they learn choreography, they perform it for a month and then move on. And I had an opportunity here to learn choreography, which I literally did for 8 years. And to see, even though it's the same choreography, you go on stage every day in a different state. Whether it's physical, sometimes you're injured, sometimes something happened at home, but you go and do the same thing every day. And there are some unexpected things that happen on stage sometimes, and you need to react in real time. So it was very, on the one hand, it was very similar what happened for 8 years as far as what I was doing, the environment that I was working at. And then I could see also the development and the process that I was going through by doing the same thing. So that, that was, in retrospect, it's hard to, since like the moment I finished the show, I did not perform anymore. I started performing. So I can't say, it's hard for me to say what I took and how I am today as an artist, because I don't perform anymore. The performance in a way transitioned into me standing in front of 20 people teaching them a skill. So that's where I'm on stage now.
Yeah, although I think like for me, like being a performance artist and being an artist, I can have space in between them. So I think that you can still consider. I mean, I think it's a very personal thing. Which things we consider part of our art and which things we don't consider as part of our art. And yeah, but before we open another chapter, I want to ask you still a question about what you said, because you said like that for you, when you being a gymnast and performing your routine, you didn't consider it as let's say under the same wing as the performance on the circus show, because of the not being not actively thinking about the emotions and what you're expressing. But there is a point there that I'm curious, because there's one choreographer, I think I'm quoting it correctly, I think her name is Meg Stewart, and I think that she said something like, every movement contains emotion. So in a way, like even the most disciplined gymnast that goes like into their Zen space still expresses something. And then you see the difference, because I think like when I watch some sport, I do recognize the difference in the execution of the exercise, but you also see a different person. And the person, and yeah, so in a way, I don't know, I think, didn't you, like, what could you take from those experiences? Because nevertheless, there is pressure, people are watching you, you're focused on your routine, but you're still a person. And you also said that you felt that within the circus world, you felt that your comfort zone was the acrobatics. And I can see the connection, because of course, like when we are doing something that is very difficult to perform, it pulls the attention from us on the level of like our personality into the thing that we are doing. No, it's like, wow, an amazing flip. But within this flip, there is a person. And for me, it's an interesting tension, because I think like we are always ourselves, even if we are, let's say, hiding behind our technique, or if we can really embody the technique and then express ourselves genuinely through the technique. And I'm curious, like, so did you manage to take something from those experiences and really use it in the stage, or like, how was it for you?
Again, as it's interesting, but even as a gymnast, if I go like to my career as a gymnast, there's no real emotion besides maybe fear of failure or being present and not letting the emotions interfere with the execution. That's what's gymnast. The only expression of emotion is when you lift the arm to the judge in the beginning, and then when you bow in the end or say hi afterwards, after you finish the routine.
And why is it like this? Because when I think about my basketball, because of the complexity. Okay.
It's so complex, and the sports is getting harder and harder, and you're judged by doing the hardest skills that you can. So the harder the routine is, the more potential points you can have, but then more chances that you fall. So like in high level competitive gymnastics, especially in the guys, there's no music, there's no dance. With the girls, there is some level of expression there, but even then, they do the routine thousands of times and have it. With the guys, it's just you need to nail it. So and then the nice thing about it in the show, the show I found was fit the reason why they hired me was because I fit the profile perfectly. Yeah, the way I looked, the way I moved, my skill base in gymnastics, and my ability to do something on stage. And then with the different numbers in the show, eventually not all the performers did all of the same numbers. I went to the places that fit me, and some of the acts included both high level of acrobatics, and at the same time they required a certain character. Okay, here you are this creature, so you have to be the creature while doing the acrobatics, and then communicate with other people on stage. So that's theater to some level, that fit my abilities.
It's interesting because it gives me a different point of view on what does it actually mean to do sport in that high level. Because I don't know, I'm coming from basketball, and I see, and for me, it's a sport that there's a lot of space for being emotional. Like you can play angry, you can play chill, you can, and you see it with the highest, even in the highest level, you see like NBA players. For me, I read a lot of emotion in how people are playing. Also, maybe because it involves communication, and you have to communicate with your opponent, and you have to communicate with your team. And then when we communicate, I think it's impossible to be emotionless. Like you have
to. Of course,
to.
You are who you are. So that's a big difference between sports, competitive sports, where you are competing against someone else or with a team against other people or working together. And in gymnastics or this type of sports, you're competing with yourself. That's the only person you're competing with. You are competing. You want to finish the first place or whatever. You're competing with other people who are doing the same thing. But in the end, when you are on stage, the only person you're competing with is yourself. Your doubts, your fear, your ability to mask everything aside and just focus on the moment. Not let the thoughts. You don't have time to think. You need to execute what you prepare for in practice. So in that sense, it's just a different type of performance style or competitive style.
Yeah, no, I get some kind of a sensation of it because it's so far from my own personal experiences that it's hard for me to really imagine. And to some extent, I'm even, if I need to go and like in an audition, somebody tell me, okay, now do the best thing you can do, then I'm like totally out of my comfort zone. I need kind of the time, the space to, like, it's hard for me to, as you say, to nail things. But I'm curious about other aspect that is I think really present in the story that you said, and is about the identity changes because I think that's, I mean, many people when they look at this transition or maybe I guess like the first projection about your story is looking at the physical abilities. Okay, you were a gymnast, then you can translate your skills into the performance art. But what about the identity? Because this is a big thing, no? Like to really let go of something you've been doing for so many years and was so part, especially from childhood, because how did you handle the identity transitions, or like what was it for you?
So finding the interesting thing is from the moment I started working in the show, I found it again. So I felt at home with what I was doing. I wasn't the same, but I was relying on my body. It was a very familiar place for me. I was able to I knew what I needed to do well on stage. So, it took me many longer than other people, but eventually, I felt good with what I was doing on stage. And then at the same time, I was also suddenly I was able, I found this environment where I can also continue to explore my handstand. And this is another thing, aside from my performance, my passion as a practitioner was handstand. I found it. I did handstand for many years from childhood, but then I have the privilege still today to continue refine and work on a skill that I was doing since the age of 10. And this is something that I'm very fortunate, I feel, on a personal level, because kind of this is going back to my identity as a kid, as a gymnast, a young gymnast. Of course it's different. I'm not competing today, but I'm able at the late 40s to continue to learn new things within the same system that I was part of for so many years.
But do you manage to have some space between you and those identities? Because like one thing that I always question myself, and I think again, Corona gave it a certain real life experience, is what am I without those things? Like what am I when I'm not Matan the dancer, or in your case, like the handstand artist? Like, because also our bodies, they are finite. Like we will die. It's not something we can keep forever. We are getting older. How do you try to keep some space between it, or like, or
I explore some other things, of course. It depends. I have my personal life. I have my family and my responsibilities as a parent and all that stuff, which is not related to that. But it is still a big part of my life. I don't think you choose it. It's like, it is what it is. Like for me, I'm not, I don't, for the good and for the bad, I'm not a planner. I don't plan ahead, years ahead. I don't know how long I can do it. And sometimes I ask myself, how long I can do it. What's the concept that I like to play with is like, what's the expiration date of a skill I'm working on? How many years can I do it? When will be the last time I'll do a handstand? And but then there is a day to day. I show up in the morning, and it's a pleasure for me to go and do my warm up and go on my hands and do my routine, my repetition, and then continuously, go after new skills or develop as a practitioner and as a teacher as well, because that's what I do today.
That's a very interesting question. Like, what is the expiration date of a certain physical skill?
And occasionally I get injured and I have a tweak, and it's like, okay, I had a wrist injury a few weeks ago, and I couldn't put my wrist on the floor. And it was like, you panic a little bit, because that's what you do. Like, what can a hand balancer do without his hands? And the fragility of our body and what you do. And then at the same time, I do the best I can to, I spend a lot of energy and time to prolong my career by, working on prehab and rehab and mobility and learning new things and making right choices, knowing when to stop. Stuff that you learn over the year. And I think many artists or physical artists, aging physical artists, they are confronted with the same things. 40-year-old dancers or 50-year-old dancers, their bodies are not like a 30-year-old dancer or a 20-year-old dancer. And then you need to, be responsible with the choices you make and the skills that you work on. And this is something that I continue. I go. There's a cycle that I continue to go into, because I am competitive. I do have the urge to learn new things and excel. And at the same time, I have my limits.
Yes, like all of us. But maybe the reason why I'm curious about it is because, first, like, I'm going personally through some transitions in my life and around the identities that I've been building in the last decade, and something that maybe a question to you, because for me, being a dancer is something that I see more as a mindset than a set of skills that I have. So in a way, I feel like even if I wouldn't be able to walk, I can still see life through the dance perspective. How is it for you with your practice?
I'm a specialist in that sense. I do head balancing, I do hand balancing, and everything else I do kind of supports this skill set, this craft. So it's I would compare, like, if I compare to other art, mastering handstand is like mastering a musical instrument. It's very, you don't ask a pianist why they do the piano. They're passionate about it. That's what they do. It's less physical than what I do, but it's more similar in that sense. Okay, than a dancer. And then if I decide to go and explore other movements, for example, different flow work and stuff like that, it comes. I try to bring it into my practice, but it's still my main passion as a practitioner or as a mover. This is it. This is handstand. This is for me. I don't promote it as the thing to do. It just happens to be what I'm drawn to and what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, no, I know actually from meeting you and also from seeing what you're posting online, I never had the feeling that you're kind of the, like the missioner type who is trying to tell everybody that this is the best thing. And it's very clear that it's a personal choice. But I'm asking it because I think that every we are all managing a certain relationship to the body. Some people do it more consciously, some people do it less consciously. People like us who kind of make a living out of physical practices, it's a little bit more present. And for me, it's an interesting underlying question, no, to the practice. Like, what kind of a relationship am I building with my body through my practice? And I feel that with the dance, I mean, maybe one thing that I'm trying to harness is this kind of ever-changing nature of things. And I'm curious, like, because I'm sure, like, I've done my I've invested around 6 months with handstands. So I'm very far from having your experiences, but I've just opened the door and have seen where this path goes. And I've learned many things by that are beyond my physical practice. And I wonder, like, what happened when you push it so far? Because, like, what happens to, like, what are you learning there? Because it's like so many hours. I'm like, what is the thing that you're taking beside the practice for you?
Yeah. So, it's also like a challenging, today, a challenging time where so much is shared. So in a way, you're seeing what's happening, and indirectly, I found myself sometimes, competing, or I don't know if you call it competing, but with, every year there's a new 18-year-old Ukrainian kid who's doing crazy tricks, and it's like you see it, and on the one hand, it's very motivating because it pushes you to do other. But then at the same time, I said, "Oh, I'm almost 50 here, so I cannot take what they're taking, and I need to really make the choices of what to go to and go after, and when to just go." And I end up the longer I do it, the more I focus on refinement of the skill and making it a little softer on the body, and to be able to do it for a long period of time, for the next 20 years. I don't know what's going to happen. It's hard. There's no guarantees. But also it depends. I think I often question myself, with the choice of skills I go after. Is it really worth it? Is the risk worth it? Because as far as like injuries, certain injuries, the older you get, simple, the longer it takes to heal. And sometimes you can injure yourself to a point where you won't be able to do it again. So I'm constantly playing this thin line between pushing myself, learning new things, and putting like, okay, this is enough, and go, and I try to go in other directions so I can continue to do it. And then I started, since I left the show and moved to Europe, suddenly in one day, literally, because I had to, I became a teacher in full-time job. I started sharing my experience in workshops, and it became my third career, another career that is connected to my practice. Okay, and this is something that I also been processing for the last few years, and I noticed. First of all, I evolve as a teacher through my practice, because I explore a lot of what I teach in my own practice. And then also just by meeting other people and communicating with them the technique that I do. So I never, that's another thing. I never planned to be an artist, but I also never thought I will ever be in a place where I'll be teaching people. It kind of happened. Yeah, I didn't. It wasn't part of the plan.
That's the dance of life.
Yeah. And it's interesting for me to see, me suddenly, like, and I feel very comfortable, teaching handstand, because again, if before I was comfortable performing as a gymnast, now I'm comfortable teaching what I do, and yeah, so it's that's something that's ongoing. I teach differently than how I taught 6-7 years ago. Very different, although the skill level is the same.
But like what you said about this kind of constant entrance of younger people with like like how I can definitely see how when I was studying dance, what were the, let's say, the moves that people did to kind of bring themselves up of the crowd. Now it's so much crazier. Like most of the dancers, they are half acrobats. And in my time, like if you could do a nice handstand, you were like, whoa, acrobatic dancer. But now it's like, so it really evolves. But it's also nice to recognize like that, like that with the aging comes a different thing. And like, as you said, like that was for me like the thing that captured most of my attention. Like that, how can I do the skill a little bit more softer with myself? And that's something that when you're young, most of the people are not so concentrated about being softer with themselves. It's like, it's the ambition and the fire. And by the way, there is something I wanted to ask you, like, how old are you? You have 2 daughters, no?
Yeah.
And how old are they?
They're 9 and 11.
And did the transition from the circus world was also somehow related to this wish between you and your wife? Are you married or partner
I mean, it was a combination. We were already, she was in the show since creation. So 1.5 years more than I spent. So, and we were performing there for 8-9 years. And I turned 40, and it was just, we realized, it was, we call it like the golden trap of these shows in Golden Cage in Vegas, because you have a very comfortable lifestyle. You have a steady job and you enjoy what you do, but it's really intense on the body. And also you're doing the same thing, and it's hard. It's hard on you. And we both decided, okay, we had both our daughters, 4 and 2, and we decided it's time to move on before we can't do it anymore. So it was nice to make the choice, to be proactive, and said, okay, it was a great experience, and let's move on and see what happens.
So they were in the world already while you were still on the show.
Yeah. And so the older daughter, Yael, she saw us performing, which was a great experience as well.
And so like, yeah, I'm just wondering, because like this, there is something about show business that like, the show must go on. It's always like you're serving something that is kind of bigger than yourself, but being a parent is like, like the priority is like family always come first. So how was it somehow did it make your life easier in a way to kind of leave the performance, the show business behind for like your new...
The performance life in Vegas is very particular, or Cirque du Soleil for that matter. The life is very structured. There's a lot of assistance. So it's still, we probably spend more time with the family than average working couples. So we had to show up to work at 5 o'clock every day. When you have little babies, the kids go to sleep at 8. So we spend the whole morning with them, and then the nanny comes over at 4 o'clock, and then you go to work. And so in some respect, we had a lot of time with the family, and we were doing the work. It was just, I think in the end, it was just very challenging physically, and we just felt we needed to move on. That was what made the transition or leaving the show possible. And then moving also, we were both, she's French, my wife is French, and my family are all in Israel. So moving from Vegas to Europe made it easier for both of us. So the kids can see their grandparents, and we're both closer to our families, which was part of also what led us to move to Europe and not to stay in the US.
And one thing that I've seen a little bit, that's once in a while you're also sharing on your Instagram account some moments with your family, with your daughters, training moments, and And I'm wondering, like, what is your role there, or like how is the relationship between you and your kids that are kind of following you to some extent with this sport career, but like what is your role there?
So it's very, they don't like, it's very difficult to coach your kids, and I don't there are some examples of parents who are the coaches of their kids. For me, I couldn't see myself doing it. And I usually, when they want to do a handstand, I'll be there, and of course I'll help them, but I won't force them to do my thing. So I try, even though I have this coach in me that, okay, now point your feet and do this and push, but then like, okay, just have fun, and then suddenly sometimes my daughter come and they ask me and I help them, and they see me, so it's mostly by example. They see me on my hands on the weekends when we travel, when they're in vacation. So they know that's what I do. It's very natural for them to see me, and then the choices that they made. We took them to gymnastics or to the pool, and now they have their own kind of path that they're exploring, and we're trying to support them. And it's often difficult because you also, as an ex-athlete or performer, what it entails and the difficulties and dealing with coaches and dealing. So it's challenging in that sense to be a parent of athletes and being, because my family were not athletes, we're not competitive athletes.
That's what I'm curious, because I also kind of sometimes my kids, of course they are aware of what am I doing, and there's a lot of playfulness that comes with it. But yeah, I'm like, it's still curious to me, like because of course they could have become busy with, I don't know, painting or whatever, being in a hiking group, whatever, but they ended up doing sport. And I'm curious, like, do you feel like that it's just something that, it's part of your aura as a person, that they kind of were attracted, or you had some, I think that it would be good for them to learn the lessons that I've learned through the competitive world, or like, what was your motivation from there?
You always ask yourself whether the kids are doing it because of your expectations, and even though when I was a kid or younger or later when I retired from gymnastics, you start going back and, did I really do it because I liked it, because I loved it, or because of what it meant for me to receive all the feedback from, Yuval is doing so well in gymnastics and working hard for, so I got this as a kid. I was proud of what I was doing, and my parents let me feel proud of what I was doing, but then you ask yourself, do you do it because you really like it, or because your parents think it's a good thing that you're doing? So now that I have kids, and they already have their own careers and paths and stuff, so I'm trying to be there for them, and both of us, my wife and I, are trying to help them, but in the end of the day, it's their decision. I hope that they love what they're doing. It's always challenging as parents in that respect.
Although what I find really inspiring about this kind of thing that you're doing with you, that you encourage these kids, is that, I think that maybe the story of this kind of you're older than me, but somehow I still include us more or less in the same generation when it comes to values, like that many parents are always trying to protect their kids and to make sure that their life is as easy as possible. But I think that it's really important because life really became very, very much easier, like there is abundance of things. And I think that the lessons that you learn through going through this kind of hardship of physical improvement for children is probably wonderful. No, it's like that it's not everything easy. Not everything is in the click of a hand on the mobile phone or something. That certain things you really have to invest time. It's not immediate. No, it's good lessons. No.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you see it now. You see it now with the corona, and suddenly they cannot go to the gym, and everything is through the screen and their cell phones and their TV and their attention, and you realize how valuable it is this time that kids do kids who do sport or arts or go away from the screen and just explore their limits and learn new things. It's quite amazing in that respect. There's the dark side of the sports world that it's always on the side, and we just want to make sure that they're okay as they go. The higher level they become, but we're trying to be there, more support their path rather than direct them.
Yeah, it's a fine balance, because I see certain parallelness between my role of a father and the engagement that I do as a teacher. And I also see how becoming a father and really embracing this role really also changed my approach to teaching, because I think with children, it can be a little bit more obvious that you're there to guide, but you're not there to own the process. And with students, it's a little bit like, you seem to me like somebody who gives a lot of freedom to people who study with you, but there's also an example of a lot of, teachers who become gurus, and they're like becoming the meaning for the student is through the teacher. And I think that in that regard, being a father, at least for me, was really helping me to trust that, that I can give myself fully, but still maintain this space that the students are not mine, and that they have their own thing. I know. How do you deal with like long-term students and these things? Like do you manage to deal with this kind of attachment that can come with that?
Yeah, I mean, I have people who studied with me for a long period of time, but I don't. It's a matter of semantics. I don't say he is my student. If someone wants to say that he's my teacher, they can say, but it's not something I require. Also, the way we are today and the way I work, I just give workshops around the world. People are free to do whatever they want. They can go and study from other people, and in the end of the day, I'm aware that I'm not the best teacher for everyone. So people need to, if people fit my personality and the style of my teaching and how I approach things, then they'll be attracted to what I do. And some people will be attracted to other teachers, and it's okay. Of course, sometimes it's a little bit, you are affected by it. If someone that you worked with closely studied with other person, it's like, but I try to let go of that and just focus on helping the people who come to study with me. In the end of the day, my role is to help people to have a better handstand in the context of handstand. If people come to a handstand workshop or come to study with me, and then other things, I hope I teach them other things as well. But this is the essence of what I do, what I teach. So yeah, I give more freedom in that respect to the people who work with me.
Yeah, but and I think that's something that I really appreciate, and maybe that's also why I felt very comfortable being in the room while you were teaching, because I know it's not obvious what you said about like hearing that somebody was studying with another person, but and seeing your emotions and the attachment coming and really letting go of it. That's not obvious. This is that's something that you can become better at, or you can ignore it. And I think that for me, like that's a good example what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's we live in a different world. Like traditionally, people teachers of handstand, it's an art form or that was studied either by a coach that coached you throughout your career, or from family members, circus families who taught their kids to do a handstand, and then their kids taught. This is how it was traditionally taught. And today, the information is all out there. people are sharing their process, like me, and other people are sharing their practice, and the information is a lot more prevalent than what I had 20 years ago when I started. Okay, and so it's a different world. There's no one teacher. You're affected by many people who are in the game. And I think asking like, okay, you have to, we live in a different continent, and you have to train only with me and tag me on the, it's too much.
But you had your own teacher? Like, did you have this special relationship with somebody that you followed, or because you also started late and all that?
Yeah, I had a coach in gymnastics for many years, a few coaches actually. But then when I made the transition to hand balancing, I found this old French guy. He was 75 at the time. His name is Claude Victoria, who is an old school circus performer and teacher. And found a way to get a reach of him, and I went to study with him for a week in France. And he kind of, looking back, I didn't spend too much time with him. Overall, maybe throughout maybe I spent 3 weeks with him. A week here, 4 days here, 4 days here throughout the years. But the first week that I spent with him, he kind of gave me the template of my path as a hand balancer. This is how we should practice. This is how the positions should look like. And since then, I'm trying to apply what I learned in that week. Very old school. He had pictures of a student on the wall, and this is how the position. This is how I want to do the handstand. This is how I want to put the hand, position the hand, the style that he taught. And it kind of, he was my teacher, but then the majority of the time I'm on my own. I practice on my own. I explore the handstand through practice, and I'm basically my own coach now.
So yeah, maybe let's dive a little bit into that, because I also have some things that I'm curious to hear. Because first, it looks from the outside like you're very structured, like what you're doing, and like this consistent training. But just before we started the episode and we were chatting a bit, you told me, it's far from that. So what is the training for you? Is it like kind of your comfort zone? Is it kind of a habit? Is it like really just my work I do? What is it for you? Like this space of training, is it a place to meet yourself? Like, I don't know, like what kind of things you project on that space?
Yeah. So first of all, I usually call it practice. Just a different wording. I don't, although it's very physical what I do, and it's a lot of body, and I don't see myself as today as part of the fitness industry or as an athlete. I'm a hand balancer. This is my craft, my practice, which happens to be physical. And being physical is just something I'm at home. This is, I feel very similar to, and we've talked about at the beginning of the conversation, practicing handstand is very similar to going back in time to the 1980s, how I felt when I was practicing gymnastics. I was 4 hours at the gym, moving like half an hour each apparatus, putting my chalk and repeating hundreds of times the same skill and trying to refine it. So it's not so much about, repetitions and getting stronger. It's about refining a skill and learning it. So I always loved that process that I did as a kid.
But wait, is it a semantic thing that because that you wanted to point out first? Like I like this differentiation, but is it a semantic between the word training that pulls this association of like fitness, or are you trying to point something else?
Exactly. So I don't get me wrong. I do some strength work, but it supports my practice. Okay, I don't do it for the sake of to be strong, to do the hardest trick and get strong. In that sense, okay. What I do is like I'm trying to. So if I do conditioning, is so I'll be able to do it for the long run, to prepare my joints and to do it for a long periods of time. Okay, but the skill itself, the refinement and the very delicate part of technique that allows me to do it and then also judging myself how I do it, not only to do the trick, it's the way I do it, the style I perform it, which is connected to also the teacher that I had. Okay, I'm trying to do similar to, other hand balancers that I look up to. But the actual practice, I feel at home. It's not heavy at all. So the opposite. My wife laughs at me, like if I can't practice, I'm cranky. I need it. It's part of my daily routine. That on a personal level is a need for me almost.
And that's something that can look very differently, I think, from the outside and from the inside, because I think like the obvious maybe reaction to see somebody, who is detailed and, share his practice and writes, like that's my routine, I do it every day. So the first reaction that I think that would come is like, wow, you need so much discipline. But in a way, it sounds like that it's more like the opposite, like that it's like you do it so naturally that it's like there is no need for that discipline. But is there areas that you still feel like, okay, I really do it because it's need to be done, or really that you find pleasure in everything that you're doing there within the realm of your practice?
So my practice is I repeat like the majority of the things I do in my practice. It's things I do every day. So there are my sets, my warm-up sets, and but like even if I do like a warm-up set on 2 arms and do a transition between positions, so it's like just preparing the body for the more advanced stuff on 1 arm and stuff like that. Being present, and it's going back to we also talked about a little bit about meditation, whatever you call it. Just putting the timer on for 1 minute and focusing on the moment, trying to perfect each skill that you go through during the set, it's something, it's a big part of my practice. And then, so I have the things I repeat every day, and sequences that I repeat every day, which evolve over time. So the moment the sequence becomes too easy, I make it more complex and then go through a process of refining it until it again becomes easy. And then that allows me to progress, to move forward, which gives me a lot of satisfaction. I don't learn new things every day, but the fact that I'm able to over time refine my skills is something that I enjoy. And then I make a point of doing also, new things, whether it's in handstand or learning skills like juggling or, stuff that are not related necessarily to handstand. Spend more time in mobility work, so I feel better in my body as well. I start now every day with spine mobility, simple stuff, not like over, and I'm not dancing, but just bringing more movement into my body in what is usually very, I'm holding my body in a tight position because that's what I'm supposed to do as a hand balancer. But finding the softness in other unrelated movement disciplines is something that also helps me to keep it fresh.
And what about you said the word meditation, because I've heard some comparison, or like, that certain people, like for them, the handstand is a very meditative quality, or that, it can be kind of a replacement for other practices that are more internal. Do you consider it as something in that direction? Because I personally, I was living for around 6 months in a meditation center, and I practiced it longer outside of the center as well. And I see it as something very differently. But I wonder how do you experience it? Maybe it also relates to the definition of what meditation is, but...
Exactly, yeah. So, there's the classic, you'll close your eyes for 10 minutes and focus on your breathing and try not to go into your thoughts, into your mind. Okay, this is a classic, meditation practice. Okay, when you when you go to handstand, for example, for the 1 minute, if it's a high level skill, I'm able to go away from my mind and just focus on the details. So whether like if it's if the inhale, exhale, so here point your feet and feel the contact with the ground or whatever, and stay in control and not, when I do one arm handstand, I can't think about the stories. I can make stories. I have to focus on balancing, being present, and the higher the level, the more challenging the skill, the more you have to focus on the present moment.
But that's for me exactly like the differentiation, because I feel that the moment I'm doing a skill that demands, it's like it's almost inherited to the activity. If I do a handstand, it's inherited that I have to really focus, because otherwise I'm falling. But if I'm sitting on my ass, there is no inherent challenge. So then, of course, like it's so difficult to bring the attention, and you immediately go to your thing. And that's for me like a little bit the difference. And I wonder, because in your level, I guess that to do a normal handstand is maybe like for me to, I don't know, stand on my legs. Maybe not. But so I guess maybe in the easier skill, you get more, you have to control your mind more.
So when I do a regular handstand, yes, I can close my eyes and I can think about what I need to do later. Okay, so in a way, going after the next level or deeper into the skill allows you to go into that state of mind where you have to be focused and be very present in your body at the moment. But again, this is like, how do you define meditation? But yeah, it has the ability to focus my attention on what I'm doing, no distractions. Like I fight sometimes with, I finish my handstand and again go to my cell phone because I heard a beep, and then I found myself, so in a way, the practice itself allows you to be, if you just take these 2 hours and do the work, it allows you to enter this, I wouldn't say state of mind, but it's just, it's a practice itself.
But no, it sounds a bit detoxing, no? Like you can really shut off distraction and have your really quality time with yourself, no? At least that's how it sounds when you describe it.
And I think that's how it should be in order for it to work, in order for it, in whatever practice you do. It's not related to handstand. Whether it's a musical instrument, whether it's any skill that you go after. So it's hard to, if you go into what is meditation, then you can fit it to certain areas.
Yeah. And another question that I'm curious and is like, what is your relationship with comfort? Because one phenomena that I've noticed relatively late, I would say, is like how by pursuing constantly the next challenge, what I'm constantly facing is discomfort. And in a way, I've almost kind of lost the ability just to be simple and at ease with my body. So like, as I'm moving, I'm always like being pulled to like where there is challenge. But do you feel like that? Are you going also through this kind of question, or like, what is your relationship with comfort?
Occasionally I have these cycles of injury and physical discomfort. So sometimes you spend like weeks or months just, rehabbing and getting out of this discomfort back to your place where you can focus on learning skills. So it goes, of course, there's always some surprises along the way. The main thing is I see, and I can say it because I've been doing it for, many years, and there's a constant search to go further in the level of skill, in the level of control, in the level of understanding it in your body. And it also, and as a side effect of my practice, also, I feel a lot of the times I reach realizations. I'm able to communicate what I teach because I feel it. I do it. I feel it in my body. So often, when I teach technique, I just kind of try to regurgitate what I actually feel when I do a handstand, and it makes it very easy for me to communicate it. You know, I'm not doing something I learned in a text. It's something that's ongoing, and then I you know, a lot of what I feel I learned through practice, things that I later on teach in a teaching setting.
Because your wife is also a physical practitioner. No, what is it? What was her?
She was a synchronized swimmer.
Synchronized swimmer. Yeah. So
yeah,
my wife, she's on the medical field. She's a dentist, so she enjoys doing some. She enjoyed climbing and she did some yoga, but like it's not her craft. And I always see her as a certain reference to kind of the paradoxes that are happening by being so busy with the body that in some extent I feel that she's more comfortable within her body than me, because I always notice like what is not there, or and there is a certain bliss that comes with like being less sensitive, and it's an interesting kind of paradox that I find. And
yeah, I mean, if it's so physical, and you don't. I joke about it, but you don't, on Instagram, you don't see the pain in the morning. Okay, so every artist, every dancer, they all, like, you look at them in the morning off stage, they're all hurting, and occasionally, yes, you do something intense physically, and there is physical pain involved in any intense physical practice. So, I'm on the one hand, I'm not doing it because it's healthy or because I want to be healthy. I hope that I'm able to be physical for many years, but it's not the main goal. Okay,
that's actually maybe that's the kind of paradigm that the whole fitness industry is kind of putting on all our different discipline, especially that nowadays there is this kind of movement universe that people are just deliberately trying to kind of pull some information from different disciplines, and I think that many are also doing it kind of for health reasons. But for me, dance in itself, and maybe I think it seems like maybe we can agree on this, like that is not at all about health. It's about it's about communication. It's about performing something. It's about embodying concepts. But yeah, the health is really, especially when your body is your instrument.
Yeah. So
sometimes you pull it into destructive areas. It's like,
yeah, and then any practitioner or artist, it's their responsibility to take care of them so that they can continue to express what they chose to express, with the type of art that they chose for themselves. So then, a big part of my practice is also just taking care of myself, not because I'm, working out or training. It's just because I want to be able to do it for 10, 20, 30 more years and see what happens.
Hey, Yuval. So we've been chatting for almost an hour and a half, and I really enjoyed the conversation, but I also want to give you some space to share with the audience what are you doing, like where people can get involved in what you're doing and what are you offering at this moment. So maybe you can share a little bit.
So first, in normal times, and I hope it's going to get back to that soon, I travel on a regular basis every almost 2 weeks to a different, mostly around Europe, different European cities, where I offer 2 workshops, one for beginners, people who are learning to hold a freestanding. So it's a kind of a basics workshop. And then another workshop for more intermediate level, people who already have a freestanding and are just looking to develop that further, whether it's presses to handstand, the one-arm handstand, etc. So that's my regular events that I do. And then I'm probably going to continue what I've been doing in the last year. I teach on a regular basis classes via Zoom, mostly for beginner and intermediate practitioners. again, I share what I teach at the workshop, giving tools on how to develop the handstand, develop the handstand practice. I teach how to practice, basically, the art of handstand. And you can find, follow my Instagram page mostly, where I share. I don't do too much tutorials, but I share my own practice over the years, and I try to make a few uploads a week, sharing a little bits from my own daily practice, where I try to always share what I am working on and what how I evolve over time, and by sharing this is also a lot of information, valuable information for other practitioners that are on the path.
Cool. So I'll definitely put all the links to where people can find you, your website and your social media account. And yeah, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to hear your personal story and also like how you approach things. And you're definitely an inspiring figure for me. And I really hope to have a chance to meet you again in person and to keep exchanging.
I hope so too. Yeah, hopefully next year or maybe this year.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you again for coming, and until the next time, my friend.
Okay. See you.
If you want to see more precious and insightful moments, make sure to check our short clips playlist. To see longer interviews, check out the full episode playlist just below it. And to be notified for all future videos, click the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell. See you on the next episode.